My name is Elena Morales and I'm 29 years old. The night my sister Natalie humiliated me at her engagement party was supposed to be a celebration of new beginnings. Instead, it became the moment I finally revealed to my family that the disappointment they'd spent a decade mocking was actually the one person keeping them all afloat. But before I tell you how I shut down my sister's $95,000 engagement party by revealing I owned the estate she'd been bragging about for months, you need to understand just how deep the cruelty ran in my family. I arrived at the Willowbrook estate at 6:15 p.m. on a warm evening in late September. The property was breathtaking. A historic mansion set on 12 acres of manicured gardens, with string lights hanging from ancient oak trees and a view of the valley that looked like something from a painting. I'd purchased the estate 11 months ago for $1.8 million, and every time I looked at it I still felt a thrill of accomplishment. What made tonight special wasn't just that it was beautiful. It was that my sister had no idea she was hosting her engagement party on my property. I parked in the guest lot and walked toward the main entrance, where a welcome table had been set up with place cards and a guest book. A young woman in a catering uniform greeted me with a bright smile. "Welcome to the Natalie and Trevor engagement celebration. Can I have your name?" "Elena Morales," I said. "I'm Natalie's sister." Her smile faltered slightly as she searched through the place cards. She picked up a clipboard, scanned it, then looked back at me with confusion. "I'm sorry, I don't see you on the primary guest list. Let me check the secondary list." "Secondary list?" I asked, though I already knew what that meant. "Oh, it's just, sometimes there are different tiers of guests with different access levels." She found my name and her expression shifted to something between embarrassment and pity. "Here you are. You're on the observer list." She handed me a badge clipped to a gray lanyard. Unlike the other badges I could see guests wearing, ivory with gold trim that said family and friends, mine was plain gray with black text, Guest Observer Limited Access. "What does limited access mean?" I asked, though again I already knew. I'd seen the access lists Natalie had submitted to my estate manager 3 weeks ago. I'd approved them personally, curious to see exactly how far she'd go. "It means you can attend the ceremony and watch the celebration, but you don't have access to the buffet, the bar, or the formal seating areas. There's a viewing section set up on the side terrace." She looked genuinely uncomfortable delivering this information. "I'm sorry. I just work for the catering company." "It's not your fault," I told her, clipping the badge around my neck. The gray lanyard hung heavy and obvious against my navy dress, a visual marker of my second-class status that everyone could see. I walked through the main entrance of the estate I owned, past the marble floors I'd had restored, under the crystal chandelier I'd spent $40,000 having rewired and cleaned, into the grand ballroom where 83 guests were already mingling with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The moment I stepped through the doorway I felt heads turn. People glanced at my gray badge then quickly looked away. A few whispered to each other. I recognized most of the guests. Family members, my parents' friends, people from Natalie's social circle. Every single one of them wore the ivory and gold family and friends badge. My sister Natalie stood near the French doors leading to the garden terrace, radiant in a white cocktail dress that probably cost $2,000. Her fiancé Trevor stood beside her in a tailored suit, his arm around her waist. They were holding court, accepting congratulations, laughing at jokes, posing for photos. My parents stood nearby, my mother in an elegant emerald gown, my father in a tuxedo, both beaming with pride. Natalie saw me and her smile widened, not with warmth but with something sharp and triumphant. She grabbed a microphone from the nearby podium and tapped it for attention. Everyone, can I have your attention for just a moment?" The room quieted. All 83 guests turned toward her. I stood near the entrance, suddenly very aware that I was about to become the center of attention in a way I absolutely did not want. "I just want to take a moment to acknowledge someone special," Natalie said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. She pointed directly at me. "My sister Elena is here. Everyone, that's my sister right there by the door." People turned to look at me. I forced myself to smile and give a small wave. "Now, some of you might notice that Elena has a different badge than the rest of us," Natalie continued, gesturing to her own ivory and gold lanyard. "That's because this is a very special, very intimate celebration and we wanted to make sure we had the right people in the right places. Elena's badge says, Guest Observer, which means she can watch and enjoy the celebration, But this is really for family only. Real family. The silence that followed was excruciating. I could see people shifting uncomfortably, not sure whether to laugh, agree, or pretend they hadn't heard. A few looked genuinely shocked. No buffet access for observers, I'm afraid, Natalie added with a light laugh. This is for real family only. But Elena, we're so glad you could come and watch. Trevor and I wanted you to see what a real celebration looks like. Trevor, her fiancé, actually high-fived her. He raised his hand and she slapped it with a grin, as if she'd just delivered the perfect punchline to a joke. A few people in the crowd chuckled nervously. Most just stared at me, waiting to see how I'd react. My mother was smiling, not broadly but enough that I could see she approved of this public humiliation. My father looked slightly uncomfortable but said nothing. My Aunt Rosa, standing near the bar, looked down at her drink. My cousin Marcus whispered something to his wife, who shook her head in response. I stood there with my gray guest observer badge hanging around my neck, took a deep breath and said, "Thanks, Natalie. Beautiful party. The estate looks wonderful. Doesn't it?" she said brightly. Trevor and I searched for months to find the perfect venue. Willowbrook Estate is exclusive. They don't just let anyone host events here. You have to meet certain standards. I'm sure that's true, I said evenly. She turned back to the crowd, dismissing me. Now everyone, please enjoy the champagne. The ceremony will begin in 30 minutes on the garden terrace. The crowd returned to their conversations, though I could feel eyes on me as I moved through the room. The gray badge was like a scarlet letter, announcing to everyone that I was less than unworthy, an observer of a life I'd never be part of. I walked toward the side terrace where the viewing section had been set up, a row of folding chairs positioned behind the main seating area, with a partial view of where the ceremony would take place. It was the kind of seating you'd give to vendors or staff, not family members. As I sat down in the back row, a familiar voice said, "This is messed up, Elena." I looked up to see my cousin Marcus standing there with 2 glasses of champagne. He handed me one despite the fact that my badge clearly stated I had no bar access. "Thanks, Marcus," I said, accepting the glass. He sat down beside me, his own ivory and gold badge a stark contrast to my gray one. "I don't know what's going on with Natalie, but this is wrong. You're her sister. You should be up there with the family, not back here like some random person off the street." "Natalie has her reasons," I said carefully. "What reasons? What could possibly justify this?" He gestured around at the viewing section, the gray badge, the public announcement. "This is cruel." I appreciated his support, but I couldn't tell him the truth yet. Instead I said, "Let's just get through tonight. I'll be fine." He shook his head but didn't push further. He stayed with me for a few minutes, making small talk, trying to normalize the situation. Then his wife called him back to the main area, and I was alone again with my gray badge and my folding chair and my view of the family that had decided I didn't belong. If you're genuinely enjoying this story, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that like button. But only if you're finding it interesting. No pressure at all. Let me take you back 7 years so you can understand how we got here. I need you to see the pattern of dismissal and cruelty that led to my sister handing me a guest observer badge at her engagement party. I grew up as the younger daughter in a family that valued appearances above everything else. Natalie, 4 years older than me, was everything my parents wanted. Beautiful, socially ambitious, married to the right kind of man. Her first marriage lasted 3 years before ending in an expensive divorce, and always concerned with status and perception. She worked in luxury real estate, selling multi-million-dollar homes to wealthy clients, and made $180,000 a year plus commissions. My parents loved introducing her as our daughter, the real estate agent, to the stars. I went a different direction. I studied software engineering at a state school, graduated with honors, and took a job at a small company called VentureGrid that built data analytics platforms for healthcare systems. My starting salary was $72,000. Good money, but not impressive by my family's standards. My parents told people I worked in computers, with the same tone they might say works in retail. VentureGrid was a startup with 12 employees when I joined. I was employee number 8, brought on to develop the core infrastructure for their predictive analytics engine. I worked insane hours, sometimes sleeping on the couch in the break room, living on coffee and takeout, building something I believed in. My family never asked about it. When I tried to explain what I was working on, my mother would interrupt to tell me about Natalie's latest commission or the celebrity client she'd just shown a house to. 5 years ago, VentureGrid got acquired by a major healthcare corporation for $650 million. As one of the early engineers with equity, my shares were worth $3.2 million after taxes. I was 24 years old and suddenly wealthier than I'd ever imagined possible. I didn't tell my family. By that point, I'd learned that my achievements didn't register with them unless they came with the kind of visible markers they understood: luxury cars, designer clothes, expensive vacations. Instead, I invested carefully. I bought a small but nice condo in a good neighborhood. I kept driving my Honda Accord. I continued working as a senior engineer at the acquiring company for $160,000 a year. I invested in real estate, starting with a duplex, then a small apartment building, then, 11 months ago, the Willowbrook estate. To my family, I remained Elena, who works with computers. The quiet one. The one who didn't achieve anything worth celebrating. The exclusion started subtly and grew more overt over time. Natalie got married at 25, and I was invited to the wedding but not included in the bridal party. "You wouldn't fit the aesthetic," she told me. "All my bridesmaids are in fashion and entertainment. You'd feel out of place." When she got divorced 3 years later, my parents threw her a fresh start party with 60 guests. When I bought my first investment property, my mother said, "How nice, dear. Natalie just closed on a $4.5 million estate in Beverly Hills." Family dinners became competitions where Natalie's accomplishments were celebrated and mine were dismissed. Natalie showed a house to a famous producer today. Natalie was featured in Los Angeles magazine. Natalie is dating someone very successful. Meanwhile, if I mentioned a promotion or a successful project, my father would change the subject. But the most painful pattern was the financial one. Because while my family spent years telling me I wasn't successful enough to matter, they had no problem taking my money when they needed it. It started 6 years ago when my father's investment portfolio took a hit during a market downturn. He came to me embarrassed, asking for a loan of $15,000 to cover some expenses until things stabilized. "Don't tell Natalie," he said. "You know how she is about money. This is just between us." I gave him $20,000 and told him not to worry about paying it back. A month later, my mother needed help with unexpected medical bills. $8,500. Then Natalie needed a loan for her divorce attorney. $12,000. Then my parents needed help with property taxes. $18,000. Then Natalie needed money for a down payment on a condo. $35,000. It became a pattern. Every few months, someone would call asking for money. The amounts varied. $3,000 here, $10,000 there, $25,000 for a business opportunity that fell through. Over 6 years, I gave my family $278,000. I kept meticulous records in a spreadsheet. Date, amount, recipient, stated reason. They never thanked me in front of each other. They'd call me late at night or send private texts, their voices strained with financial stress. Then the next day at family dinner, they'd act like nothing had happened. Natalie would brag about her latest purchase. A new car, expensive furniture, a vacation to Europe. My parents would praise her financial success. No one mentioned that I was the one actually funding half of it. I kept giving because I thought eventually they'd see my value. I thought if I was generous enough, helpful enough, quietly supportive enough, they'd recognize that I was worth including in the family. But the opposite happened. The more I gave, the more they took me for granted. 2 years ago, Natalie announced she was dating Trevor, a venture capitalist with family money and a portfolio of successful tech investments. She was thrilled, my parents were thrilled, and suddenly every family gathering became about Trevor and Natalie's perfect relationship. When they got engaged 8 months ago, my parents threw them an engagement dinner at an expensive restaurant. I wasn't invited. I found out about it when my mother posted photos on Facebook. When I called to ask why I hadn't been included, my mother said, "Oh, Elena, it was just immediate family and Trevor's parents. Very intimate. You understand." "I'm immediate family," I pointed out. "Well, yes, technically. But Natalie wanted to keep it small and elegant. You know how you are at these things, you're not really comfortable in that environment." 3 months ago, Natalie called me asking for $40,000. She and Trevor wanted to host an elaborate engagement party, but Trevor's trust fund disbursement wouldn't come through until the next quarter. It's a loan, obviously, she said. We'll pay you back as soon as the money comes in. This party is really important to us. We're inviting some of Trevor's business connections and we need to make the right impression. I'd reached my limit with the financial requests. Natalie, I've given you and Mom and Dad almost $280,000 over the past 6 years. I can't keep doing this. There was a pause. Then she laughed. Elena, don't be dramatic. You haven't given us that much money. And anyway, family helps family. That's what we do. When has the family helped me? Oh please. You're being ridiculous. We include you in things, we invite you to events. You didn't invite me to your engagement dinner. Because it was small. I explained this. Her voice had taken on that sharp edge it got when she was annoyed. Look, either you're willing to help your sister or you're not. It's your choice. I made a decision in that moment. I'll tell you what, Natalie. I'll do something better than giving you $40,000. I'll give you the venue for free. What do you mean? I mean, I know a place. A beautiful historic estate with gardens, views, enough space for 100 guests. I can get you the venue for free if you want it. She was immediately interested. What's the catch? No catch. I just want to help my sister. Consider it my engagement gift. She was suspicious but intrigued. I sent her information about Willowbrook Estate, the property I'd purchased 6 months earlier as an investment and event venue. I didn't tell her I owned it. I told her I had connections and could get her a discount. She fell in love with it immediately. The historic mansion, the gardens, the prestige of the location. It was exactly what she wanted for her engagement party. When she called to ask about pricing, my estate manager quoted her the standard rate. $25,000 for venue rental plus catering, staffing and service fees that would bring the total to around $95,000. That's way too much, Natalie said. Elena said she could get me a deal. My estate manager, who knew exactly who Natalie was and what I was planning, said, let me check with the owner. He called her back and offered her the venue for free. Venue rental waived, she'd only pay for catering and services. The total came down to $47,000, which she and Trevor could afford. She accepted immediately. Over the next 3 months, she bragged to everyone about how she'd landed this exclusive venue, how she had connections that got her special treatment, how her engagement party was going to be absolutely stunning at this gorgeous estate that normal people can't even book. She never once thanked me for the referral or acknowledged that I'd helped her get the venue. When I mentioned it at a family dinner, she said, "Oh, that? Elena just gave me a name. I'm the one who negotiated everything and made it happen." And now, sitting in the viewing section with my gray guest observer badge, watching my sister accept congratulations for her beautiful venue and her sophisticated taste, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The ceremony began at 7 p.m. on the garden terrace. Trevor stood under an arch decorated with white roses and ivy, waiting for Natalie to walk through the garden path. It wasn't a wedding, just an engagement celebration, but they'd planned it with wedding-level formality. There were readings about love and commitment, champagne toasts, a ceremonial ring exchange where Trevor gave Natalie a promise ring to wear until the wedding. From my folding chair in the viewing section, I had a partial view. I could see Natalie's profile, hear the words being spoken, watch as guests wiped away tears at the romantic sentiment. My parents sat in the front row of the main seating area, holding hands, my mother dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. I checked my watch. 7:22 p.m. The ceremony would finish around 7:45, followed by dinner at 8 o'clock, then dancing and celebration until 11 p.m. My plan was timed perfectly. After the ceremony concluded, guests moved into the ballroom for dinner. The main seating area had round tables with ivory linens, elaborate centerpieces, place settings that probably cost $150 per person. The viewing section had no tables, just the folding chairs. True to Natalie's word, I had no buffet access. Staff members walked past me with trays of appetizers, delivering them to the main seating area while I sat in my corner with the glass of champagne Marcus had smuggled to me earlier. My Aunt Rosa approached during the cocktail hour, looking uncomfortable. "Elena, Mija, I don't understand what's happening. Why aren't you sitting with the family?" "You'd have to ask Natalie," I said. "This is wrong. You're her sister. Let me talk to her." "Please don't, Aunt Rosa. It's fine. I'm fine." She looked like she wanted to argue but didn't know what to say. Instead, she hugged me and whispered, You deserve better than this, before returning to the main area. At 8:15 p.m., dinner was served to the main seating area. A choice of filet mignon or Chilean sea bass, roasted vegetables, truffle mashed potatoes, a mixed green salad with candied pecans and goat cheese. The smell was incredible. My stomach growled. I'd skipped lunch anticipating I'd eat at the party. I hadn't counted on being excluded from the buffet. A server noticed me sitting alone and approached quietly. "Miss, I'm not supposed to do this, but would you like me to bring you a plate? This is ridiculous." "I appreciate that," I said, "but I'm fine. I'll get something after I leave." She looked at me with pity and walked away. Another mark of my second-class status. The catering staff felt sorry for me. At 8:47 p.m., Natalie and Trevor made their way through the ballroom, stopping at each table to greet guests and accept congratulations. They laughed, posed for photos, thanked people for coming. They didn't come to the viewing section. They didn't acknowledge my presence at all. At 8:52 p.m. I stood up, smoothed my dress and walked across the ballroom toward the administrative wing of the estate. A few people noticed me leaving, but most were focused on the celebration. I walked down the corridor with its polished hardwood floors and historical portraits, past the library and the sitting rooms, to the office at the end of the hall. My estate manager, Richard Chin, no relation, was waiting for me as planned. "Ms. Morales, is it time?" "It's time," I said. He handed me a tablet and a document. "Everything is prepared as you requested. All you need to do is sign this authorization and I'll make the announcement." The document was simple. Authorization for the estate manager to terminate the event early and remove all guests from the property. I drafted it with my attorney 3 weeks ago, knowing this moment would come. I signed my name. Elena Morales, owner, Willowbrook Estate LC. "Give them 5 more minutes," I said. "Let them finish dinner. Then make the announcement." Richard nodded. "Are you certain about this?" "Your sister." My sister publicly humiliated me in front of 83 people. She gave me a badge that labeled me as an observer, not family. She denied me access to food and drinks at an event I'm paying for. She has spent years taking my money while treating me like I don't matter. I looked at him steadily. "I've never been more certain about anything." "Understood." He picked up the tablet and headed toward the ballroom. I followed at a distance, positioning myself near the entrance where I could see but not be immediately noticed. At 8:57 p.m., Richard walked to the center of the ballroom and spoke quietly to the DJ, who turned down the music. Richard picked up a microphone, tapped it for attention and waited as the room gradually quieted. Natalie looked annoyed at the interruption. She was mid-conversation with some of Trevor's business associates, clearly networking. Trevor looked curious. My parents looked confused. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard said, his voice professionally polite but firm, "I apologize for interrupting this lovely celebration. My name is Richard Chin and I'm the estate manager here at Willowbrook. I need to make an important announcement regarding this evening's event." The room went completely silent. 83 people turned to look at him. "There's been a development concerning the property ownership and the terms of tonight's event that requires immediate attention." He consulted his tablet. "I need to inform you all that Willowbrook Estate has an owner who has exercised their right to modify tonight's arrangements." Natalie stood up, her face flushing with anger. "What are you talking about? We have a contract. We paid for this venue." "Actually, Ms. Morales, you didn't pay for the venue. The venue rental fee was waived by the owner. You paid only for catering and services." Richard remained calm and professional. "The owner has decided to exercise their right to end tonight's event early." "That's ridiculous." Natalie's voice was shrill now. "Who's the owner? I want to speak to them right now." Trevor stood up beside her, putting on his venture capitalist voice, the one that probably intimidated junior employees and service workers. "This is completely unacceptable. We'll be filing complaints. We'll be demanding refunds. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with?" Richard didn't flinch. "I'm dealing with Ms. Natalie Morales and Mr. Trevor Ashford, who are hosting an engagement party on property owned by Ms. Elena Morales." He turned and gestured toward me, standing near the entrance. "The owner is right there." Every head in the room turned toward me. The gray, guest observer badge still hung around my neck, suddenly looking ridiculous against the backdrop of what Richard had just revealed. The silence was absolute. I could see the confusion on people's faces, the shock on my parents' expressions, the dawning horror on Natalie's face as she realized what this meant. I stepped forward into the ballroom and Richard handed me the microphone. I took it, looked around at the 83 witnesses and said, "Hello everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Elena Morales, Natalie's sister. The one with the guest observer badge." Natalie's face had gone from flushed to pale. "You're lying. You don't own this place. You can't afford." "I purchased Willowbrook Estate 11 months ago for $1.8 million, I said calmly. "I have the property deed, the LLC formation documents, the title insurance and 11 months of property tax payments to prove it." "Richard, would you like to show them the deed?" Richard pulled up a document on his tablet and held it so nearby guests could see. A property deed clearly showing Elena Morales as the sole owner of Willowbrook Estate LLC. My mother found her voice. "Elena, I don't understand. Where would you get $1.8 million? "From the same place I got the $278,000 I've given this family over the past 6 years, I said. "I worked for a startup that got acquired. My equity payout was $3.2 million. I invested it carefully in real estate and other ventures. I've been quite successful actually. You just never bothered to ask." My father stood up. "If you have that kind of money, why didn't you tell us?" "Because every time I tried to tell you about my work, my achievements, my success, you interrupted to talk about Natalie. Because when I bought my first investment property, Mom said it was nice, and then spent 20 minutes talking about Natalie's latest commission. Because I learned that my accomplishments didn't matter to this family unless they came with the kind of visible status markers you could brag about to your friends." Natalie had found her footing again, anger replacing shock. "So what? You own the venue. Big deal. You still can't just kick us out. We have a contract, we paid for services." "You paid $47,000 for catering and staffing," I said. "I waived the $25,000 venue fee as my engagement gift to you. That was generous of me, don't you think? Especially considering that 3 months ago, you called me asking for $40,000 to fund this party, and when I said I couldn't keep giving you money, you called me ridiculous and said family helps family." The room was riveted now. This had gone from an engagement party to something else entirely. A public unveiling of family dysfunction that no one could look away from. "When has this family ever helped me?" I continued. "You've taken $278,000 from me over 6 years. You excluded me from Natalie's engagement dinner. You gave me a guest observer badge at a party I'm essentially paying for. You announced to 83 people that I don't have buffet access because this is for real family only." I looked directly at Natalie. "You said I should watch and see what a real celebration looks like. So here's what a real celebration looks like when the person you've been mocking actually owns everything you're standing on." Trevor tried to take control of the situation. "Look, clearly there's been a family misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," I said. "Natalie has spent years treating me like I'm worth less than her. She's taken my money, dismissed my achievements, and excluded me from family events. Tonight she handed me a badge that labeled me as an observer and told 83 people I'm not real family. She did that on property I own at a party I made possible, in front of witnesses who can now see exactly who my family really is." My Aunt Rosa spoke up from her table. "Elena's right. This is wrong. I've watched this family treat her terribly for years and I didn't speak up enough. But this," she gestured at my gray badge, "this is cruel." A few other people murmured agreement. I could see some guests pulling out their phones, undoubtedly texting friends about what they were witnessing. This would be the talk of every social circle for months. Natalie's voice cracked. "You're really going to shut down my engagement party? On what's supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life?" "No," I said. "I'm not going to shut it down. The party will continue. Everyone here is welcome to stay and enjoy the rest of the evening. The catering you paid for will be served. The bar will remain open, the music will keep playing." I paused. "But I am going to make a few changes to the access badges." I nodded to Richard, who'd been holding a box of new badges. He walked to Natalie and handed her a gray, guest observer, lanyard identical to mine. "From this moment forward," I said, "Natalie and Trevor are guest observers at this event. No buffet access. No bar access. No formal seating. You can watch from the viewing section and see what a real celebration looks like when you're not considered real family. The shock on Natalie's face was complete. You can't do this. I absolutely can. It's my property. And Richard, please provide ivory and gold family and friends badges to everyone else in the room. They're all welcome to enjoy the full celebration, except for the guest observers. Richard had clearly prepared for this. He began distributing new badges to the guests, who accepted them with expressions ranging from shock to barely suppressed delight at the drama. Within minutes, everyone in the room except Natalie and Trevor wore the ivory and gold badges. My parents sat frozen at their table, looking between me and Natalie with expressions of disbelief. My mother started to cry, not the elegant tears she'd cried during the ceremony but genuine distress. "Elena, please," she said. "Don't do this to your sister. Whatever issues you have, we can talk about them later." "We're not going to talk about them later, Mom. We're done talking. You spent years telling me I wasn't successful enough, wasn't sophisticated enough, wasn't worth including in family events. You took $278,000 from me and never once said thank you in front of Natalie or Dad. You let Natalie give me a guest observer badge and announce to 83 people that I'm not real family." I looked around the room. I wanted all of you to see who they really are. I wanted witnesses. And now you all know. Trevor had his phone out, probably calling his attorney. "This is harassment. This is me exercising my property rights," I said. "You're welcome to leave if you don't like the new arrangements. Everyone else is welcome to stay and enjoy the party I'm hosting. The party I own on the property I own with the success I earned that this family never acknowledged." I handed the microphone back to Richard. "Please make sure Natalie and Trevor are comfortable in the viewing section. Everyone else, enjoy your evening. The buffet will open in 10 minutes. I walked out of the ballroom through the main entrance. Not the side entrance, not the viewing section, but straight through the center of the room with my head high and my gray badge still around my neck. A reminder of what they'd tried to make me but failed. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I love hearing from people who've dealt with difficult family dynamics. Behind me, I could hear voices rising. Natalie crying, my mother trying to calm her, Trevor on the phone barking orders, guests murmuring to each other in shock and fascination. The party would continue, but it would never be what Natalie had planned. Instead of a celebration of her engagement, it had become a demonstration of exactly how badly you can miscalculate when you underestimate someone. I went to my office in the administrative wing and sat down at my desk. My phone started ringing almost immediately. My mother, then my father, then Natalie, then Trevor, over and over. I let them all go to voicemail. They called 3 times in the next hour. At 10:15 p.m. my Aunt Rosa knocked on my office door. "Can I come in?" "Of course." She sat down across from me, still wearing her ivory and gold family and friends badge. That was quite a reveal out there. Was it too much? I asked, suddenly wondering if I'd gone too far. "Too much." She shook her head. "Mija, that was perfect. Your sister has been treating you terribly for years and your parents let it happen. Tonight you showed everyone exactly what that looks like. You let them humiliate you publicly, then revealed they did it on property you own. That's not too much. That's justice. She's going to hate me forever. She already didn't value you. You just made sure everyone else knows that now." Rosa reached across the desk and took my hand. "I'm proud of you. I should have stood up for you years ago and I didn't. I'm sorry for that. You're standing up for me now. That matters." She stayed with me for another hour and we talked about family, about patterns of behavior, about the courage it takes to finally say, enough. Then she went back to the party where apparently most of the guests had stayed, enjoying the open bar and the catering and the drama they'd just witnessed. The party ended at 11:30 p.m. Richard reported that Natalie and Trevor had left around 9 p.m., unable to tolerate sitting in the viewing section with their gray badges while everyone else celebrated. My parents had tried to convince me to come back and make peace, but when I refused, they'd left around 10 p.m. The remaining guests, about 60 of the original 83, had apparently had a wonderful time, with several commenting that it was the most memorable party they'd ever attended. I went home that night, changed into comfortable clothes, poured a glass of wine, and finally allowed myself to feel everything I'd been holding back. I didn't cry, I'd moved past tears. I felt lighter, like I'd finally put down a weight I'd been carrying for years. My phone showed 67 missed calls and 89 text messages by midnight. I read a few of them. From Natalie, "You ruined my engagement party. How could you do this to me? You're a horrible person." From my mother, "Elena, this is cruel and unnecessary. Natalie is devastated. How can you be so heartless toward your own sister?" From my father, "We need to talk about this. What you did tonight was unacceptable. Call me immediately." From Trevor, "My attorney will be in touch. This isn't over." I blocked all their numbers and deleted the messages without responding. But there were other messages too. From Aunt Rosa, "You were magnificent tonight. Call me tomorrow and let's have lunch." From Marcus, "Holy shit, Elena. I had no idea. I'm sorry I didn't speak up more. You were right to do what you did." From 3 other relatives who'd been at the party. Messages of support, apologies for not defending me earlier, admiration for how I'd handled the situation. And one message from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi Elena, this is Jennifer Wu. We met briefly tonight at your sister's party. I'm a reporter for the lifestyle section of the local newspaper. Would you be willing to talk about what happened? I think a lot of people would be interested in your story about family dynamics and financial success. No pressure, just wanted to reach out." I didn't respond to that one either, but I saved it. Maybe someday I'd want to tell this story more publicly. Or maybe I wouldn't. Either way, it was my choice now. 3 days after the party, I received a letter from an attorney representing Natalie and Trevor. They were demanding a full refund of the $47,000 they'd paid for catering and services, claiming that I had sabotaged their event and caused them emotional distress and public humiliation. I forwarded the letter to my own attorney along with documentation. The signed contract that clearly stated the venue owner had the right to modify access privileges, video footage from the security cameras showing Natalie handing me the gray badge and making the real family-only announcement, screenshots of text messages where Natalie had asked me for $40,000 3 months earlier, and bank records showing the $278,000 I'd given the family over 6 years. My attorney responded with a letter of his own. Ms. Morales fulfilled all contractual obligations regarding the event. The catering and services paid for by your clients were provided in full. The modification of access badges was within the property owner's rights as stated in Section 7.3 of the venue contract. Ms. Morales is prepared to countersue for defamation and emotional distress if your clients continue to make false claims about her conduct. Additionally, Ms. Morales has extensive documentation of financial support provided to your clients and their family, which contradicts their claims of being victimized. I never heard from that attorney again. 6 weeks after the engagement party, my mother called from a number I hadn't blocked, my Aunt Rosa's phone. Rosa had texted me first to warn me, so I answered. "Elena, it's Mom. I know. We need to talk." "No, we don't. Please, Elena. Your sister is getting married in 8 months. She wants you to be there. We want you to be part of the family again." I was never part of the family, Mom. That's what the guest observer badge was about. That's what years of exclusion and dismissal were about. Natalie made it very clear that I'm not real family. She didn't mean it that way. She absolutely meant it that way. She said it into a microphone in front of 83 people. She had special badges made. She announced that I couldn't access the buffet because it was for real family only. There's no other way to interpret that. My mother was quiet for a moment. Then, "She's sorry. We're all sorry. We didn't realize." "You didn't realize what? That I had money? That I was successful? That I owned property? Would you have treated me better if you'd known? Because that's not actually an apology, Mom. That's you being sorry you miscalculated, not sorry you were cruel. That's not fair. What's not fair is taking $278,000 from me while telling me I'm not successful. What's not fair is excluding me from family events because I didn't have the right kind of job or the right kind of lifestyle to show off to your friends. What's not fair is watching Natalie get praised for buying things with money I gave her while I got labeled as the family disappointment. We made mistakes, my mother said, her voice cracking. But we're family. Family forgives each other. Family also respects each other. Family doesn't hand out guest observer badges to their own sisters. Family doesn't take money for 6 years without saying thank you. You want me to forgive you, but you haven't actually changed anything. You just want me to go back to being the quiet one who gives you money and accepts being treated as less than. So that's it? You're just done with all of us. I'm done being treated like I don't matter. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be built on actual respect, not on you realizing I have assets worth acknowledging. Until then, yes. I'm done. I hung up. Aunt Rosa called me right after. I'm proud of you, she said. That took strength. It doesn't feel like strength. It feels like loss. It's both. But you're losing something that was never really there in the first place. He was right. The family I'd been fighting to be part of had never actually existed. It was a fantasy I'd created, hoping that if I was good enough, generous enough, successful enough, they'd finally see my worth. But they'd never wanted to see it. They'd wanted me to stay small so they could feel big. It's been 14 months since Natalie's engagement party. The Willowbrook estate has become quite successful as an event venue. I've hosted over 40 weddings, corporate events, and celebrations in that time. The business is profitable, and I've hired a full-time staff to manage operations so I can focus on my day job and my other investments. Natalie and Trevor got married 6 months ago. I wasn't invited, not that I expected to be. I heard through Aunt Rosa that it was a beautiful wedding at a different venue, smaller and more intimate than they'd originally planned. Apparently, many of the guests from the engagement party declined the wedding invitation, claiming scheduling conflicts. Aunt Rosa suspects they didn't want to be associated with what happened or risk more family drama. My parents sold their house 4 months ago. Without my monthly financial support, they couldn't afford the mortgage and property taxes. They moved into a smaller condo in a less expensive neighborhood. I heard my father tried to take out a loan using Natalie's income as collateral, but she refused. She has her own family now, my mother told Aunt Rosa. She has to think about her future with Trevor. The golden child, apparently, doesn't shine quite so bright when there's no one else's money propping her up. I don't miss them. That's the part that surprises me most. I genuinely don't miss being part of a family that spent years making me feel worthless. I've built something better. Real relationships with people who value me for who I am, not what I can provide or how I make them look. Aunt Rosa and I have lunch every 2 weeks. Marcus and his wife came to my condo for dinner last month and apologized for not speaking up sooner. I've gotten involved in mentorship programs for women in tech, and those relationships have become more meaningful than anything I had with my biological family. Last week, I was at Willowbrook Estate reviewing plans for an upcoming wedding when I saw a couple viewing the property for their own event. The bride-to-be looked around the ballroom with wonder. "This place is perfect," she said to her fiancé. "It feels like somewhere that really values family." I almost laughed at the irony. This place, where I'd revealed to 83 people that my family had given me a guest observer badge and told me I wasn't real family, had become a symbol of celebration and belonging for other people. But maybe that's exactly the point. The family you're born into doesn't define you. The people who share your DNA aren't automatically the ones who will value your worth, support your dreams, or treat you with basic human dignity. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop fighting to be accepted by people who will never see your value, and instead build your own life with people who do. I learned that lesson at my sister's engagement party, standing in front of 83 witnesses with a gray guest observer badge around my neck, in a ballroom I owned on an estate I'd purchased with success my family never acknowledged. I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic or cruel. It's simply revealing the truth and letting people see what's been hidden in plain sight all along. Natalie got her engagement party at her dream venue. My parents got to play the role of proud family for 83 witnesses. And I got something far more valuable: freedom from people who would never see my worth no matter what I achieved. The gray badge is framed in my office now, hanging on the wall as a reminder. Not a reminder of humiliation, but of the moment I finally stopped begging for scraps of acceptance from people who had nothing worth accepting me into. The moment I realized I didn't need their validation because I'd already validated myself. I'm Elena Morales. I'm 29 years old. I own a successful event venue, have investments worth over $5 million, and I'm surrounded by people who actually respect me. My biological family gave me a guest observer badge and told 83 people I wasn't real family. They were wrong. And 90 minutes later, when I walked to the office and signed one document, everyone knew it. And I've never been happier in my entire life.